Welcome back to the ECW 2007 save, and for what will be the 5th episode of ECW on FX. I've just come back a little bit earlier in the week this time because there is a pretty big news story as it pertains to TNA Impact and that Thursday Night War. They put on this show at their most recent tapings, which was scheduled to air up against us this Thursday. However, a decision has been made after 4 straight weeks of defeats in that Thursday Night War that Spike will now show TNA Impact in the late night slot. They will no longer go up against us at late evening, and that means, as far as I'm concerned, the war is pretty much over and we have won. I will keep an eye on TNA going forward because we're still at war with them in the game, but as far as these Thursday night rating wars go, we have wrapped that up pretty quickly. But it looks like it's not all going to be good news going into this week's show, as there is a plethora of backstage incidents to deal with. Raven first being a jerk and throwing a punch at Nigel McGuinness, reminiscent of Tommy Dreamer doing the same to CM Punk the other week. This time, however, it was a bad move. He didn't get the better of Nigel McGuinness and was beaten up as a result. That's almost punishment enough in its own, making an absolute clown of yourself backstage, but we're going to fine him. You can't be laying your hands on other people. Raven saying nothing about it, but Nigel McGuinness happy, so that's a pretty good result. Rhino now mocking Teddy Hart's lack of push. He's only been here 5 minutes, so it's completely unreasonable, but he's not done anything physical, so I think I'm just going to give him a stern warning. That's not the type of thing we want in our locker room, and nobody cares either way. Sonny Siaki and Paul Burchill bonding. They love black and white films, so that's a lot better. We need some positive things here. Yep, being cheerful, Joey Styles, passing on tips to the protege, I assume, and likewise between Lance Storm and Just Incredible. So not all bad, but we're seeing a recurring pattern now. Raven, Rhino, Dreamer, all trying to rough up the young guys. The old guard obviously threatened for their position, but ECW is looking to the future, and if one of these groups does have to go, it will be those old timers who potentially are past the best. ECW on FX begins with Rhino in the office of Paul Heyman confronting him about the match announcement from last week, where the ECW fans learned of his opponent for the main event of Living Dangerously at the same time that he did. He demanded more respect for the dual champion of ECW. Paul Heyman played down the situation and instead spoke about his impressive victory last week and the interview that Jerry Lynn had conducted, which would air later tonight. Rhino wasn't happy, but Heyman was saved by the bell as Steve Corino walked in. He also had his issues and he was kicking off, but Heyman had a quicker and simpler solution for him. Heyman said that Corino has been talking about it since Guilty as Charged, so now he's going to get what he wants. Tonight, in the main event, Steve Corino will face CM Punk. So it's a really good, it's only a short opening segment, but it is a good segment to open off the show. While Rhino does struggle when going off script, Paul Heyman, as always, did really well, and Burchill, who apparently was on screen with Corino, helped him during the segment, advancing 2 storylines as we go into the recap following the opening sequence. A video package putting over what happened on last week's show. Paul Heyman announced the Living Dangerously main event, Rob Van Dam versus Rhino for the ECW World Championship. At the end of the night, Rhino defeated Brent Albright in under 2 minutes to retain the TV title, the most dominant victory we've seen in ECW on FX. RVD then took down Jerry Lynn after the match, made it clear that it was just going to be between the two of them, and he was coming for the title he never lost. Going into the opening match, and it is that debut match of Bryan Danielson, who puts in a really good 67 performance. Unfortunately, it's not a brilliant match, but it was only 5 minutes, so it never really got the full chance to get going. Danny Basham with a 44. His and his brother Doug's contracts are up very soon, so I'm just using them essentially as jobbers, and Bryan picks up a dominant victory with a cattle mutilation. Obviously a move that a lot of people probably hadn't seen at that time, and it's quite a brutal looking submission, so we're putting over that Bryan is a submission specialist. Doug Basham took issue with this after the match, seeing that brutal submission hold locked on his brother, and entered the ring to confront Bryan Danielson. It didn't take long for Nigel McGuinness to back up his fellow newcomer. He'd been at ringside for the match, and the Basham brothers backed off, realising that the odds had been evened. On the outside, William Regal looked proud of his 2 proteges. Those 2 signings showing their willingness to work together. His plan, whatever it is, seems to be coming to fruition, and we're seeing very good things from both Bryan Danielson and Nigel McGuinness early in their ECW careers. Cutting to the back, Tommy Dreamer is interviewed by Jade and promotes the upcoming Living Dangerously pay-per-view, saying that he's had enough of the hooded man's games, the man who appeared at Guilty as Charged, and if he wants a piece of Dreamer, whether he's signed to ECW or not, Tommy is challenging him to a match at Living Dangerously. Before then, however, there's somebody else who's caught his eye in ECW, and he calls out the bully Paul Burchill, challenging him to a match next week. No notes on the segment, it's just an average promo, and another backstage segment that isn't too good. But we're advancing that storyline. Sonny Siaki has been given the ultimatum, and up next, Loki is in a match, which means Xavier will likely be at ringside. Homicide warns Siaki that if he doesn't take Xavier out before living dangerously, he'd be gone from the hustle. He's reminded him of that, and therefore he'd be gone from ECW. Rocky Romero and Ricky Reyes were clearly not impressed. They're not on board with what Homicide's doing at the minute, but said nothing as Siaki was hanging off every word the hustle leader said. He's clearly buying into it. He clearly sees this as his mission, and he sets out to do that. But first is the second match of the night. A good match. It was set as a mayhem match, again because I need a mayhem car crash or wild brawl match on the show, and apparently it doesn't sit well, but the ratings always seem to be decent when I do it, so it's a bit of a double-edged sword. It says that it doesn't sit well with the crowd, but it always seems to get them buzzing and do good things. Low Key, for example, with an absolutely brilliant performance. Little Guido doing very well as well. It's a 7-minute 40 match. It's fairly open, fairly even. Xavier and Chuck Palumbo both at ringside. Some kind of involvement, but not too much that it affects the match. Like it says there, a distraction from Xavier. That's not what I meant to put in. It wasn't supposed to be the finish. Key beats Guido cleanly as we go into the post-match. Sonny Siaki coming down right after the bell to jump Xavier, but once again failing in his attempt to take down the man that Homicide has put that hit out on. Low-Key quickly reacted to the assault and dealt with Siaki in the ring with a number of stiff kicks that took him down. Xavier then joined Low-Key in the ring, and the pair hit a double kick to the head of Siaki, taking him down. When Low-Key and Xavier had left, Homicide walked down to the ring. He once again berated Sonny Siaki and his failures and told him that he was done for, it was over. Sonny Siaki got back to his feet and pleaded with Homicide for one more chance, only to be hit with a stiff slap to the side of the face. Homicide warned Siaki, "You've got one last shot and he'd better make it worth it." A good segment involving the guys from the hustle there. They're definitely doing better since we came to FX, and since they had those pay-per-view matches, they're definitely flourishing, and I'm almost tempted that Sonny Siaki, who I've said multiple times is on the brink of being cut, there's a chance that he could stay because he's actually been involved in some decent segments recently. The commentators then lead into an interview from earlier in the week. Joey Styles sat down with Jerry Lynn, who has been pretty coy since he came to ECW. He's given little away, and he explained that he wasn't back in ECW for one reason. Jerry Lynn didn't call ECW, and he didn't call Rhino. Rhino reached out to him. Of course, they go way back, and Rhino called him to ask him if he was contracted anywhere, because he might need somebody to give him a hand. He was happy to come back and help an old friend, because in truth, there's nobody in that locker room who Rhino can trust. He's back because Rob Van Dam, Tommy Dreamer, and even CM Punk want to stand here on TV as if they're principled, honourable men, when he knows that in this environment that simply isn't possible. There is no honour among thieves, and he's here to show that those men are either out of their minds or completely full of shit. Jerry Lynn is back, not because of what ECW can bring to him, he's back for what he can bring to ECW. So actually it's not a good segment for Jerry Lynn there. I went through it all without even looking at the rating, but it's quite a poor promo. He's not done very well. He's another one of them veterans who isn't having a great impact. He's going to be an okay mid-card guy, and he's fine as the foil for Rhino, but I did hope that he could be... I expected maybe him to be getting 60 ratings. He could still deliver in the ring. He's not had too many matches, but as far as promos go, which is fair enough, because Jerry Lynn isn't really somebody who's known for being a good promo, but we did need to get over his character motivation, and it's kind of that he's here to just be a bit of a chaotic influence, to cause a bit of trouble. He's here because he's done it all. He could happily retire now, but also he's got the back of his friend Rhino. Cutting now to the locker room, Sonny Siaki is seen to have confronted Xavier and Low-Key. Despite his lack of success earlier, he wants at him again. They looked ready to go, but Siaki was there only to talk. He was pissed off, he was furious. It was clear that the frustrations were getting the better of him, and he told Xavier that he had ruined his life. He says that he has just one shot to do this, so he's going to keep it simple. He's not going to fight them now, but in 2 weeks' time, he wants Xavier, and he wants him in a loser leaves ECW match. He's willing to put it all on the line. Xavier stepped forward, and he looked ready to accept the match on the spot, his pride taking over, but Low-Key put a hand on his chest. Key told Siaki to get the hell out of the locker room, and he'd get his answer next week. So an unscripted segment, probably the wrong decision there, but Low-Key did say that he didn't want to be scripted and then does a terrible job. So, you know, At least he's good in the ring, let's put it that way. We've lost heat to the storyline, but a big potential match set up. Siaki challenging Xavier to a loser leaves ECW match. We then go into the main event, which is very good to see, a 71C+. Steve Corino and Paul Burchill are a good pairing as well, and Burchill was at ringside throughout the entirety of the match. Both of them getting a 66, so very even for the main event there. Punk has lost a couple of matches recently, so maybe that's why he's a little bit lower than he had been, but it's a very good main event. Happy with that. We sent them out to steal the show, and to be fair, they did exactly that. During the match, Paul Burchill was getting involved when Allison Danger made her ECW return. The first time we'd seen her since Guilty as Charged, and she slapped Paul Burchill in the face, which angered Steve Corino's right-hand man. Burchill was worried about what might happen to his sister if he didn't get involved, so he left the ring and came between them as Corino gave a pep talk to Paul Burchill. CM Punk dived from the inside of the ring to the outside, taking down both men before rolling Corino back into the ring and hitting the go-to sleep for the victory. Burchill and Allison Danger's little confrontation on the outside probably costing Steve Corino in what had been an even match up to that point. Really happy with that main event, but the post-match segment isn't quite as good, probably because, as you see on screen, who it's rated on. Following the chaotic scenes of the main event, Paul Burchill gets back to his feet, furious with CM Punk. He enters the ring and jumps Punk, and Allison Danger tries to intervene, only to be thrown down. Instinctively, Burchill just throws an arm at her and knocks her to the ground. How Steve Corino will react to that, we'll find out because he's still out cold at the moment. Burchill continued laying into CM Punk until Tommy Dreamer ran down to make the save. Of course, he challenged Paul Burchill earlier in the night. Tommy Dreamer ended up in the same position as CM Punk, however, down on the canvas after a gut-wrench powerbomb from Paul Burchill. Burchill stood tall in the ring with Corino, Danger, Punk and Tommy Dreamer all out cold in various positions. Next week, Paul Burchill would face Tommy Dreamer, the heart and soul of ECW, and he just got a preview of exactly what awaits him next week on ECW on FX. So not a very good segment to end the show, but it is a decent show overall. I did expect or hope that we'd get a C+ after that really good main event. The in-ring action has definitely gone up to a new level since we came to FX, but the angles are still very hit and miss. I'm happy with the show overall, really, and again, we're not at war with TNA anymore. It was better than their show anyway, but we don't have to worry about what they're doing. I am interested to see, though, now they're in that late night slot, how the ratings differ, so we'll see that very soon. So it's not actually too bad for Impact. They're still getting a decent amount of viewers, but it's interesting to see now how, not being head-to-head with TNA, how many of their fans have migrated over to watch our show. 1.648, so I don't think it's that much of a difference. I don't think we've seen a great difference between the previous weeks. 2.12, so it's a better rating than we've had, but we've maybe taken 100,000, less than that probably, from them. We also have some decisions and an email to deal with. Kevin Fertig remaining with the company. We've not seen him for some time, but I am extending his contract for at least 3 months just to give him a chance. But that is the episode over, and next week we have Tommy Dreamer v Paul Burchill as we continue to build to Living Dangerously 2007, which I think is going to be a really great pay-per-view.